Hello, this is Homesbyronnette Puelu, and I am here today. I want all the girls out there and all my followers that are women to please stay tuned and listen to all of this. I am here because I am a fangirl of this woman here. I've been fangirling her on social media, and I'm so excited that I got to see her in person today. We are doing some real estate stuff together, but this is not about real estate. So anyway, this is Jillian Riddle.
Hi.
And she is a ER nurse as one career and also a podcaster. So I've been listening to her podcast that is called Life Without Secrets, which is enough to get you to want to listen.
Right?
That title was really good. I was like, I want to listen. So anyway, I just want to introduce you to Jill. You go by Jill or Jillian?
Thank you. Jill or Jillian. It works for
Jill
me.
for me, right?
Yeah, you can totally get. It's like on social, I went to Jillian, but then people that know me a long time have called me Jill, and on Facebook I'm Jill, so I go by both.
Okay. So tell us about your podcast.
Yeah.
Tell me why you went from being an RN nurse, which you still are, and wanted to do a podcast named Life Without Secrets.
Yeah, so I love that question.
Yeah.
So as an ER nurse, I see a lot of not so great things, right, that happen. I specifically work with, ICU type of patients, trauma patients. But I would say about 80% of what comes in the ER is actually things that we see like all the time. And we do run these tests, right? And we do all these CAT scans. And then we're like, okay, the good news is that we don't see anything. And then they're like, well, then why do I feel so awful?
Right.
And what do? We end up placing a Band-Aid over it, right, for that patient. And then maybe that Band-Aid works for a little while, but we never got deep
I think we've all experienced that in the ER. You go in and you're like, tell me what's wrong. And then they're like, well.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, aren't you a doctor? Tell me.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is like many times, like, the things that are happening inside of us are things that maybe we haven't dealt with in our life on an emotional level.
Okay.
And so nowadays, like over 50% of heart attacks are actually stress induced rather than just from not eating right or, not getting enough exercise, right? Like we think like, okay, if I just eat a little bit better and I go for a walk every day, then that's going to cure it all. But if we are constantly in a negative state emotionally, it causes a lot of stress on our body. It releases a lot of cortisol, which has all these other
You're seeing that in
side
the
effects.
ER.
Yeah, a lot. And so we have this society.
Not to interrupt, but that's what I like now. They have those new, commercials about the toxic stress.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Like how they can feel it so young.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a disease.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it will. So eventually like all these things are going to come to the surface emotionally, right? And so what we have nowadays and why we see so much, I think, illness really goes down to like an emotional level. I think in our society we are very dysregulated and we don't know how to manage our emotions, and we're taught how to push them under the rug, right? Don't let your emotions control you, which is true, but like there's more in depth to it. And so starting my podcast, I wanted to help people get a little bit more vulnerable about that. Okay. Because if we're not diving deeper into that, we're never healing from the inside out. And I think that we have to stop putting Band-Aids over the bullet holes of our lives, right? Okay. Like get to the deeper issue, like what's really going on? How do we really feel? Right. And now I walk people and couples through the process and how to transform that inside of them. So how do we really feel and what do we really need? Okay. Right? And how do we honor that? How do we talk about it? And how do we really heal? So So what's the formula? Like, do you interview one person each time for the podcast,
or do you interview couples, or do you is it mostly just women you interview, or is it men? I know you interviewed your husband.
Yeah, just recently actually I did it again.
So it's just it could be anybody.
It could be anyone. So the point of the podcast too is to show you that you're really never alone in what you're going through. And oftentimes we go out into the world, especially with social media, right? We put on this front of like everything is perfect and I'm fine. And then we close the door and we go inside our homes and everything is not fine, right? And we're struggling and we feel alone in that. And so in the podcast, I'm sharing a lot of people that struggled with something and then came out on the other side and to give you hope. because you're never alone in what you're going through.
Yeah, the stories were amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, people have been through some really tough things in life, and like if they can transform their life from this point to over here, so can you. You know, and I think that like we all need a little bit more hope in the world, and it's not to say that like, oh well, all we need to do is just be more positive, or all we need to do is have this perfect life, and then everything will be fine, right? It's like
sometimes it looks perfect.
Okay.
It looks perfect, and everybody else assumes it's perfect, but yet there's so much more going on inside. Yeah.
And so it's just to show like, hey, it's okay if you're struggling, but find the tools, get the help, right? I think 3 of the hardest words in our English language is I need help, right? Like how hard is that to say? And
it is hard.
Yeah, and so just by showing examples,
you don't want to look weak.
No, yeah, and so just by showing examples of like, this is where the person was, this is the help they got, this is the tools they've used, and here they are now. And not to say that like the problem necessarily is fixed, but that they've transformed their lives and got the tools so that they can live through it or with it.
Right.
You know, and I think that's...
So besides the podcast, which tell me where we can find the podcast.
Yeah, so podcasts, you can find it on any platform that you listen to podcasts on, Apple, Spotify, and Amazon, YouTube, it's everywhere.
Okay.
Life Without Secrets with Jillian Riddle is the name of the podcast.
Okay. Not Life Without Struggles.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what?
That'd be the next one.
I love it. I love that you bring that up, because like when I started the podcast, and I love that people are like, ooh, Life Without Secrets. Like, what is that? Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are thinking like, oh, I'm going to hear everybody's dirty laundry, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what
I know. That's what gets you in.
That's what gets you in the door. And then I'm like, okay, like let's really talk now. You know, because like secrets are not just like those things that we hide in our closet. They're things like, how do you really feel that you're too busy people pleasing and not honoring yourself?
Right.
And telling how you really feel and what you really need.
And they are our little
those
secrets.
Are secrets.
They're secrets.
They're secrets, right?
They're secrets.
And when we keep them inside and we don't learn to talk through them or talk about them or ask for what we need, like we are living in a negative cycle, and we're feeling resentment, bitterness, fear, right? All those things just sink in there. So
and how nice you found a platform that you can talk about all this.
I know, it's so
and
great.
then like as you're doing it, you're finding all these other people that want to talk about this and have experienced things that you can share.
It's so
now
cool.
you also, I remember listening, and you said something about you have a program, like a structured program.
I do.
And is that for individuals or for couples? Or
So I developed Love Without Secrets. So if you go to lifewithoutsecrets.com/love, or you could go to my lifewithoutsecrets.com page and click on courses. I do have a course for couples now. So you know, my husband and I struggled real hard in our relationship. We went through a lot of stuff. We went to trauma therapy. We went to marriage family therapy. We've hired coaches. We've done it all. We've paid lots and lots of thousands of dollars. And I'm happy to say that, because, you know, our relationship is far from perfect, but we have the tools, right?
Yes,
like
you've learned how to deal with all the situations.
It's obviously hard work.
Yeah.
I'm not going to live, you know, in secrecy and tell you that it's not hard work, because it is, right?
Yeah.
Like that would be not truthful.
Right.
Because it is hard work still, but we have the tools in order to like be aware of, like,
now, did
we're in the cycle.
I always have to ask this.
How we get
now,
out.
did both of you want to go to therapy? Because a lot of times,
so
there's one side that's like, nah.
So when we went, I was actually the person that didn't really want to go.
Oh,
yeah.
That's interesting.
Because we had
it's
gone,
usually the women I would think that want to go.
Well, we had gone, and I had wanted to go before.
Yeah.
But I was like so far out of the relationship. Like I was planning my exit. I was like, okay, I'm going to move up here, and then, you know, this will be perfect because I'm by my family, and then I was just looking out for my safety and survival. Yeah. Right. And like science shows. You always
had a plan B.
I always had a plan B. And science shows, like, you know, if you don't have safety and security within yourself and then within your relationship, it starts with us, right?
Yeah,
Do we trust us?
Right.
In order to trust him, right? But if we don't have that, then we are not in a position to accept love and belonging, because when we don't have our needs met with safety and security, you're not going to be able to receive like love and belonging.
Right.
And so that's where I operated from.
Yeah.
was is this secure? Is this safe? Right. And if I don't, how do I get out of it? And how do I just depend on myself and not anybody else?
Right.
And, so yeah, I had planned all this, and when things really fell apart and I was like, I'm getting out of here type of situation, he actually set it up and said, I want to go to therapy. And I said, okay, I will go, but I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. Right. And at the end of this, if we end up together, I'm okay with it. And that's really how we started. Yeah. And so we went separately for a month. And then we found somebody that we went together. So we had like 3 different therapists. Yeah. And then we were doing that. We did that for months and months. But about a month in, we started dating again. Oh. And we had to go on one date every week.
Is that part of your program too?
This is what I suggest in the program. Okay. Yeah. Okay. You'll start going on a date every week, and it has to be something new or something you haven't done in like the last 10 years together. Okay. And it's really about rediscovering yourself. What things do light you up? What is fun to you? Like, we forget how to have
Remember
fun.
why you liked each other?
Yeah, right. Like, and it sounds so simple, but like
it's not though.
We forget though, because life is busy, right? Especially in the world we live in today, when everything in the world wants your time. Whether it's a text message, the internet, social media, emails, right? Like, everything wants something from you, and we're constantly giving, and we're not filling our tanks, let alone our relationships. Exactly. So it's just like learning how to like let go of everything and learning how to have fun together again, and just with the goal in mind of like learning about yourself too, and that's how we started down that journey. And
that's very cool, and started you on this journey.
And started me on this journey, which is so funny because I remember we went to, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Ed Milet, my husband.
Oh yeah,
so
I've read his books.
Oh, you have?
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Good. Okay, you did mention that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we went to his book launch when he launched his book because my husband was working with him. Okay. And so we went to North Carolina, we went to this event. I ended up going to, it was like after the event kind of dinner with a girl named Jenna Kutcher, who spoke at Ed's event. And I didn't know her at the time, but we just totally hit it off. She had her second baby, and the baby was 6 months old. This is the first time she'd left her baby, so I was like, oh, I totally feel you. It's so hard, and we were just chatting. And it turned, so we're swapping stories, and I was telling her, like, I feel like, the world is a little bit burnt out. And we're dysregulated, we're stressed. Right. And I want to do something about it, but I'm not sure what. And she's like, she hears my story and she's like, well, you need to start a podcast. And I was like, what? She
planted the little seed.
She planted the seed. And you know what she did? Turns out she has this huge company, and she offers this course on how to put together a podcast. Oh. And so she had her team send it to me, and I got home after that weekend, and here we are, like a year and a half later.
Because you have how many episodes?
Like
over
130 now.
I know it was over 100. When I was looking at them, I was like, wow. Because I remember when you came on social media and say, I'm going to have this new podcast, and I'm like, that was over 100 episodes ago?
Yeah, I know. Time flies.
Time flies. But that also means that you're hitting a chord with people. Yeah. Because you're being listened to.
Yeah. Like, it is really cool.
And there's a lot of people with podcasts, you just put them out there, do it, whatever. It's about real estate, relationships, whatever. And they're hit or miss. Yeah. Like, they're hit or miss. But the fact that yours has touched a chord with people.
Yeah, it is cool.
And it's growing. And, I just want to recommend to everybody to take a listen to Life Without Secrets. This is Jillian Riddle, and I'll leave all the information below if you need to contact her or get onto the podcast and show you how to get there. And if you have any real estate needs, give me a call. You've got my information.
She's awesome. Thank you. This has been so fun. Thank you.